Love the idea of acreage or hobby farm. Before you fall in love with the barn, let's make sure you understand the lay of the land, septic, well access, and more. I'm Amanda McKee.
And I'm Alex. And together we are AM Realty Minnesota, a husband and wife team of real estate agents serving Minnesota and Western Wisconsin.
Yeah. So first things first, when you're buying a real property, one thing to consider is your well. A well is your own water source. So unlike being connected to a city water when you're in town, most real properties have their own well. Something to consider when you're buying a property with a well is, first of all, the benefit of it is you have your own water source. Pretty awesome, right? You have your own, you can manage that yourself. But the other thing to think about is just the quality of the water. Before you buy property, you can do a well water test where they're going to test for common bacteria. If there is bacteria, it's honestly not a big deal. Don't fret. It can easily be treated either by yourself or by a professional, and then, make it safe again and drinkable. So, and you can always do that before you finalize your property and closing. What else do we have?
So the next item we're going to talk about is septic systems. Septic is a really big deal. It's kind of a silent deal killer oftentimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know very much about septic systems or moving to a rural property. It's a new thing for most folks. But essentially, a septic system is your own private wastewater management. And so it is a system by which all the wastewater, toilet flushes, showers, washer, all those things, everything that drains out of the home, drains into that system. And from there, it goes through a process of becoming, reintegrated into the system, more or less. So in Minnesota, we often find that you're using a mound system for your septic here. And then properties that don't have a mound are being converted over to that system type. There's a handful of different types of septic system, but for the most part, those aren't really compliant anymore. They may have been grandfathered in, which is a term you might hear, but typically speaking, they'll be due for replacement upon sale. And so there's a few different ways to go about handling that. What we're going to look for is a septic compliance certificate, which means that the system has been professionally drained, cleaned, and inspected inside and out, just to make sure that everything looks good. Some really big red flags to look for pretty easily is standing water or spongy ground around a mound or septic system drain field. Water that's backing up from the property, toilets that don't flush, sinks that don't drain, things like that.
We don't see that kind of stuff.
We don't typically see that very often. And
don't be scared if it has a septic system.
If it's that bad, people are typically going to know it ahead of time. They're going to say so well before that, and probably already have a plan to have it replaced. Which kind of leads to the next point: is like most properties that have a septic, if it's non-compliant, it's not going to be financeable without having some kind of contingency in place to get it fixed. That usually involves escrowing funds to have the septic replaced sometime after the closing. It takes a little bit of time to get that done. It's not like a quick, hey, we schedule it and they're in here next week sort of thing.
Especially not in the winter.
No, not in the winter. No, typically from about November on through June, May, June. When the frost is fully out of the ground, those months we're not really able to do that. So the septic guys are really busy from May, June, all the way through September, October, November, depending on the year, because they just can't do it when the ground is frozen, when
wet, muddy,
or when there's road restrictions, because it does require the hauling of a lot of dirt and gravel.
Yep.
We could do a whole video on septic systems. Long and short of it is we're going to make sure it's compliant, and if it's not, we're going to figure out a way to get that solved.
Yes, and septic systems are so expensive.
They are, You're looking at $20,000 to $40,000 depending on the size of the home, the location, and the amount of repair that's needed. Because sometimes you have a septic system where the tanks are still good, but the mound is bad. Well, that's a little cheaper.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about a full replacement, now we're digging into a little more.
Yeah. So even if you're a cash buyer, it still is a super, super expensive project to take on. So you want to make sure it's compliant before you buy.
Yeah. I mean, we have a good example that I have a client that's a cash buyer right now. And the septic is non-compliant. They knew about it right off the bat. We negotiated $35,000 off of the asking price to help cover that cost, and they're gonna absorb that expense to do so. Actually, $39,000 is what they got off of it. They got a quote for $29,000 to have it replaced, so they came out ahead.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. Next thing we want to discuss today is access and easements. Those are fairly common in rural properties. So whether it is a shared driveway or getting access to your property through a neighbor's property or vice versa, farmers, if you have farmers that have adjacent properties to access their farmland, they might need access to, through yours.
Roads.
Yep. So the important thing to consider with easements, whether you are getting an easement from a neighboring property or you're granting it to somebody else to access, is that they are legally documented, and to prevent potential issues down the road.
Yeah, literally. So. I mean, we want to make sure that people
that was unintentional.
I know, right? That was a good one. But we want to make sure that it's not a handshake agreement.
Yeah,
because those just don't hold up.
Yeah, you have tons of risk and liability if it's not legally recorded. So we'll help you navigate all of that too.
We have a case of that happening right now.
Yes.
Yep. Somebody's getting it recorded legally as part of the sale. That's just something we wrote into the sale, and it's just being done by a lawyer now.
Yeah, the current owners just lived there for decades, and the neighbor also has lived there for decades, and they never had a legally recorded easement, and so we're implementing that now with my buyers.
Yep, exactly. So the next item is going to be outbuildings and land use, my favorite. So I am big into having outbuildings and to use the land as you see fit.
Absolutely.
You may know we're on 10 acres ourselves, and that was kind of part of the process for when we were buying. It was like, hey, how do we get to use this? Like, are there restrictions? Does the county have restrictions? The township, and what are those, and how do they work? So the first thing, let's talk about buildings and outbuildings. Especially when you're looking at rural properties, you can have everything from hunting shacks to barns, pole buildings, machine shops,
coops.
Chicken coops, duck coops, whatever you want to call it, goat sheds, lean-tos, the whole works. There's so many different types of buildings that you could end up with on a property. It could be silos, grain bins, anything. I mean, goodness, it goes on. And so what we're going to look at is the condition of those items. Are they safe? Are they going to pass your financing type? Some of these buildings, I mean, if it's in rough shape, it's not going to pass FHA financing. So we need to make sure they're in good condition, or it's conventional or cash financing for some of these things, just because, some of those old buildings fall into disrepair, and that's just the nature of being out in the field, right?
Yep.
This is kind of how it is.
Yep.
But we're going to look for things like, hey, if you're looking for a pole barn, we want to have like a concrete floor. Do you care if it's dirt? Can we save a little money on that? How's the roof condition? Because typically speaking, outbuilding roofing isn't done at the same time as the home. So, what kind of shape is that in? Is it a steel roof on your barn? We want to know. Power, heat, air conditioning in some cases, if you're getting real fancy.
There's a lot of things to think about.
There is, yeah. Do you have a heat source in there? Because, I mean, good example, a lot of old barns have a fireplace, but those can't be insured. So we want to make sure that if you're looking to get insurance on the outbuildings, that you're not using a wood burning heat source.
Insurance is kind of cracking down on that stuff.
It is, yeah. It can be kind of tricky. So we want to make sure that we're looking at things like that and talking about it as we go. Just all the little details that you want to fine tune and look at. Another item is, if you're a hunter, can you hunt there? Like, what do do you have enough land to hunt on it? Is it safe? Are the neighbors far enough away? What zone are you in? Are you allowed to hunt what you want to? Is it an archery only area? Like, what does that look like? And then animals as well. So if you're looking to homestead and have some animals on your property, can you? What does the county and the city allow?
Yeah. I mean, you had your client with the 40-acre property.
Yep. And they weren't able to use it. Yeah. So there was somebody, I have a client right now that's looking at a property in Asco, Minnesota, and there's 40 acres. But it's contained technically, part of it is in city limits, and so they consider all of it within city limits.
Yeah, it's zoned residential.
Yeah, it's zoned residential. So even though it's 40 acres, you're not allowed to have more than 6 chickens on it, and they can't do pigs or goats or any of the things that they want to do. They can't hunt the property any other way besides a bow. They can bow.
That's rough.
That's 40 acres, and you can't really use it, which is just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
but that's just the nature of it. So these are the things that we're looking at because we want to make sure, hey, you guys aren't buying a property that you can't use in the way that you intend to. So we kind of found out a lot of information about that one for them and saved them a lot of trouble.
Yep. And then types of land as well.
Yeah,
you know, the quality of the land and everything. It kind of boils down to, what do you want for the property?
I mean, what do you plan on doing with
Are
it?
you looking for just some privacy and your own oasis and retreat? Are you wanting to hunt? Are you wanting to homestead? Do you want, a space to have trails to run your ATVs? So, yeah, just a lot of things to think about when you're looking at properties with land.
Yeah, we could go on about that too. I mean, we could do a whole video just on the different types of land usage and restrictions that are allowed. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people don't know about like CRP programs and green acres programs where you're not allowed to do certain things. They put in a land trust and you get a tax benefit, but you can't build on it. You can't log on it. You can essentially just own it and hunt on it. That's about it. Yeah. Might be a good option for you if it's something you're looking to do, but just something to note because there are properties out there that are, hey, they look really cheap, but then you find out you can't build on them, and that's why. Big issues. Yeah.
Other thing to think about, and Alex did touch on it a little bit with the outbuildings, but it's financing. So first of all, when you're looking at real properties, financing can have some of its own nuances. So you want to be partnering with a lender who is experienced in rural properties.
Definitely.
Otherwise, you can get a lot of misinformation out there.
We see it all the time.
Yep. So we have a listing right now where 2 separate buyers were told by their lenders they could not get a loan on this property, even though it's only a 19-acre property. And, a great lender that we work with ran it through underwriting and said there was no problem with loaning on it. Yeah. So there's just a lot of misinformation out there. So you want to make sure you're partnering with a knowledgeable, strong lender there.
Yep,
but couple things to think about is a lot of times real properties can qualify for USDA financing. That is such a great resource. It's actually $0 down.
0% down.
Which
Most
is
people
amazing.
don't even know about it.
Yeah. I mean, think about if you're renting, you need to put first month rent, last month rent, security deposit, and all of that. You could get into a house for $0 down. Now, there are some other hoops to jump through with USDA, right? So there's inspection requirements, and all the outbuildings and everything need to pass the inspection and the appraisal, but it's definitely feasible. The couple other things to think about is how is it zoned? And then from a financing perspective, if it's zoned agricultural, this is the situation with our current listing, it is still financeable, but sometimes there are just little like nuances and you need to get creative with getting through that. But just know that if you get a no from one lender, it doesn't mean it's a no from every lender.
Right. Some folks just don't know.
Yeah, they're not all created equal. So, for example, the agricultural zoning, if you are employed and not going to be using the land as farming for your primary income, you can still get a loan on it.
Yep.
So, and then the other thing that Alex had mentioned was about the condition of the outbuildings. One of the most common types of loans is an FHA loan. FHA loans have fairly strict requirements for safety and health concerns. And the biggest one that tends to come up with rural properties is peeling paint and buildings in disrepair.
Yeah.
So essentially what that means is if the issues don't get repaired or addressed, then the property can't be financed. So we'll help you guys navigate that, but know that if you have a property, if you have FHA financing and you have a property that has outbuildings that are just like falling apart, not safe to go into, if those are not going to be able to qualify for an FHA financing. If they're in good condition but have a lot of peeling paint on them, that would all need to be scraped and repainted, which may or may not be feasible.
Yep, we've had cases where that's been done. We just had one recently. Again, man, we've had a little bit of all of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, where the buyer and actually the listing agent came out and got together and scraped and painted everything
A barn
together,
and
a
a
whole barn and a
house,
house.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
But hey, that's what had to happen to make the deal come together, and
Yeah.
that's what they agreed to do, and they did it. And
Yep.
That was great. So we've touched on a lot of items today. The last one we'll talk a little bit about is the offer strategy on rural properties. Rural properties offer a lot of different opportunities that your standard home in town don't always offer. We've touched on some of these things like baking in septic compliance reports, just making sure that that's part of your offer, making sure that your well passes. Most financing types require that your well is compliant. They're going to ask for a test and a water report. That's normal.
Yep.
So these are the kind of things that are really basic, but there's some other creative ways to bring your offer out on top. We've had a couple. I mean, for our own personal property, we bought it about this time a year. It was November-ish, right? Getting close to hunting season, and I knew that the owner of the property was a big-time hunter, and he was hunting that property pretty hardcore.
Yeah, lots of mounts in the house.
He had a lot of deer mounts all over the pole barn and whatever, and there was tracks and sign everywhere. So I knew that he was out there hunting quite a bit. And so that was one of the things that we offered was an extended closing period. So that way he could hunt the first weekend of opener one last time before selling the property. And he commented about how much he loved that, because they did receive other offers, and other people were like, we want it right now. Like, we're going to move in 3 weeks. And I said, hey, I'll give you 6 weeks. So that way you can hunt one more time. And he loved that. It was a thing that helped us personally win our property. So just looking at all these little options like that and trying to find creative ways. I mean, some of these properties are owned by folks who are, getting up there in years, and they have a lot of stuff on the land. Lived there for a
long time.
Yeah, they've got things on the land. It's tough to clear out a pole barn. It's hard to clear out a barn. It's a lot of work to clear off land when you've got equipment and machinery that's maybe defunct and it's kind of been sitting there for a while. One of the things you can do is offer to, take the property as it sits, and, just know you're going to put a little sweat equity into having some of these things scrapped out and removed if you do, or maybe you don't want to. But that way, hey, look, it's just offering them the opportunity to step away without too much work when they're, really taking on a lot of work at that age. So that might be a good option.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it as a case-by-case basis, but there are so many different levers that you can pull when you're starting to buy your rural property to strengthen your offer and ensure you get your dream property.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, did you enjoy the list of buying properties, rural properties in Minnesota? We actually have a free rural property due diligence checklist for you.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for.
So it's down in the link below. Check that out.
Yep. Well, if you love the land, but you want some more facts, go ahead and grab that checklist from us, and feel free to hit us up with a like, comment, share. Let us know if there's any topics that you heard today that you want us to go more in depth on. Maybe we'll do one about septic or land use or any number of things. So yeah, please feel free. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you the next time.
Yeah, check out other videos too.
Yeah, definitely.